Yeah, I can. That's why
Space one? Okay.
So we'll call this city council meeting for the city of New Fairview to order. Monday, October 17th, 2022. Roll call.
Harvard Burger.
John said.
Walter Clements. Stephen King. John Taylor.
Jimmy Rogers.
All present. We have a mayor. Yes.
Yes, yes.
This time we'll receive a report and hold a discussion regarding water and wastewater needs and opportunities.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really wanting to begin the report on that. So good evening, Mayor, Council. We're going to have a discussion tonight about water and wastewater needs for the city, as well as some opportunities. Present in the room to help me with the presentation is Chuck Ewing, who is the city manager for the city of Justin. We also have Don Dykstra, who is the developer of Constellation Lake, one of our approved planned developments. OC Vest, have you made it in yet? OC Vest is a developer for Shoot Branch, another planned development that's already been approved for our city. And then I've asked our engineering to check the code, so we've got Chris Shaw and Riley Perulik who will be helping out as well as part of the discussion. So approximately 2 years ago or so, the city was approached by some developers, wanted to know if we were interested in providing water, wastewater services for some mixed-use developments that they were interested in developing here in the city. The city does not operate currently a public water or wastewater system, and in fact, we don't even have what's called the CCN, the convenience, the certificate of convenience and necessity for us to be able to provide water or wastewater services. The city did contract with an engineering firm back in late 2020, Schomburg and Polk, or SPI as they're known, to investigate the feasibility of actually creating and operating a city-owned water wastewater system, and also maybe looking at obtaining a CCN for those services. And SPI actually submitted their final report to the city in April of 2021, and you have gotten that report. I emailed that to you last week. So as part of the study, SPI considered numerous options for source water, including the option of purchasing treated water from Upper Trinity Regional Water District and the city of Fort Worth. I've had some discussions with you all about the city of Fort Worth. They're currently working on updating their north side water master plan, and they're going to look into the possibility of providing wholesale water to any customers on the north side of the city, just outside their ETJ. The cities of Rome and Newark, along with us, have had numerous conversations with the city of Fort Worth Water Department, and we've submitted information to them about what we think our future water needs are going to be. And so the city of Fort Worth has all that as they're putting together their plan and what that might entail as far as being able to bring water up to this area in the future. Unfortunately, this study, it takes at least a year, so it will not be completed until the spring or summer of 2023. And from our discussions with City of Fort Worth, they're saying that we will still be possibly 5 years out from that date of being able to have water come up to us. Now, it's looking like the water will be coming to us from
Eagle Mountain.
Eagle Mountain Lake, which is approximately 41 miles from here. So that's a lot of infrastructure to bring water up here. And it's looking like if it's going to come up, it's going to come up through Rome. And if that's the case, then for us, it makes sense to continue to bring that up to 287 along US 287 or on the west side of our city. So it'll help us with development along 287 on the west side of the city in the future, not so much on the east side or the Denton County side for sure. Okay. Arbitrary Regional Water District option, in fact, is really the most readily available and the most cost-effective option for the city. So I want to focus some of our conversation on that tonight. Purchasing of wholesale water from Trinity will actually have to come though from the city of Justin, because we, the city of Fairview, are not a member of Upper Trinity Regional Water District, but the city of Justin is. Upper Trinity has also indicated that they are comfortable with selling us water through the city of Justin for the purpose of us being able to use that water for our needs. And the city of Justin will have the capacity to provide wholesale water once they complete the infrastructure improvements that they're making, including a new transmission line that's going to connect from Upper Trinity Regional Water District to the elevated storage tank that I'm sure all of you are aware of, that's on the west side of Justin along 407 in the Timberbrook development in Justin.
$1 million mile, I call it.
Excuse me?
$1 million mile. That's a pretty looking road to that water tower. I'm not joking, yeah.
That's a pretty looking water tower, I gotta tell you. That is not one. Here's a map, and Chuck is probably gonna have to help me in case I blow this up. But the dot that you kind of see in the center here is the elevated storage tank that's in that Timberbrook subdivision, and you'll see 407 is on the south side. There is another developer, Hillwood, that is to the south of 407 and further to the west, getting closer to the Avery Ranch development, that is also looking for water, and they're wanting to connect to that elevated storage tank that I just identified there in the Timberbrook subdivision. Avery Ranch, by the way, is this little subdivision you see here in the lower left-hand corner, right there. So the land just kind of to the east of that, somewhere in here is where the Hillwood development is going to be extending water at some point in the near future and connecting to that elevated storage tank. That elevated storage tank is still in the construction phase. What do you think of it?
Next May, June.
May, June, okay, so
Ground scores, things like
there's gonna be at least next May or June, but even though it may be completed, they still gotta connect the Upper Trinity line to the tank so they can start to provide water. And what do you think that might be, Travis?
Yeah, I would think, probably 3 years at least.
Okay, so there's still some issue there because, you'll have the infrastructure, you can start to lay down connecting from the elevated storage tank, but you need to have the water first, obviously, already connected from Upper Trinity to the elevated storage tank. So that's where things stand right now as far as water goes for Justin. Questions on this before I move on?
You mentioned two possibilities so far, one from Justin and one from Rome, is that correct?
Well, not necessarily from Rome, it's from the city of Fort Worth, and they will be bringing it up. Rome is interested, so if we're going to connect and bring it up into New Fairview, it makes sense that we'll be connecting at Rome somewhere and continuing to extend the line up into New Fairview, probably along US 287.
So are we talking two options? This is one and Rome's another one, or? is
No,
it one
We're
or the
not,
other?
we're not talking the Fort Worth option because they are still doing a study right now. That's going to take a year for them to complete. And even then, it's still gonna be another 4 or 5 years out before we can even start to get water up here. So right now, all we're talking about is Upper Trinity Regional Water District wholesale water coming to us through Justin.
Okay.
Okay? Anybody else? Okay. Justin will also have the capacity to provide wastewater service to the Constellation Lake development because of the way the topography lends itself for that purpose. Keep in mind that Shoup Ranch is also kind of on a similar timeline for development there along South Carolina Road, does not need wastewater service because they're actually going to be constructing their own wastewater treatment plant as part of their development. So if there's going to be any ask of Justin for connecting to a wastewater, to their wastewater line for servicing, it'll only be for Constellation Lake and not for Shoup Ranch. And in fact, Chuck was informing me that they are actually, instead of, I guess, building a processing plant, they extend it down to.
We are, actually, we just entered into a contract with Trinity River Authority. And so we will be utilizing their services for wastewater, and we will have to expand a line to their plant in Roanoke along Trail and Denton Creek. But it'll have enough capacity for Constellation.
Who's gonna manage the wastewater? I know she remember building it, who's gonna manage it?
Well, that, we'll be discussing that here shortly. Yeah. So, again, if we talk about wastewater, understand we're only talking about wastewater as it relates to Constellation Lakes development, not Shoup Ranch. Okay? Connecting to, Justin's system.
So we're gonna talk about who's gonna manage the wastewater from Shoup Ranch?
That'll be part of our discussion. So here's a map that shows the topography and the wastewater system that's either in place now or being planned for Justin. And again, give you your bearings over here on the left-hand side is Avery Ranch, and here's 407 through here. So you can see back over this way somewhere is where you would find Constellation Lake, and that's where they would connect somewhere along 407 down onto Justin's system for wastewater service.
So the property immediately east of Avery Ranch belongs to Bluefield, and then the one in the gray is Hillwood?
It says blue.
Petrus is all over.
Yeah, the purple, I guess, is Hillwood.
So there's gold east of Avery Ranch, right? Am I going the right direction? There's a gold one,
Right.
and there's a gray one, there's a purple one. So who's the gray piece?
That's already developed.
Already developed?
Either that or there aren't any plans in development. One or the other.
So that's south of 407.
Yeah, John, it could be that there just aren't any plans in development.
Okay, just asking.
Questions on wastewater?
The fiddles were sheltered for that.
Yes.
So if we are going to want service connections with the city of Justin, we need to make an ask of the city of Justin on specifically what it is that we're wanting, so that then their city council can consider what it is we're asking and make a determination and see if they're willing to provide whatever we're asking for. If they are, understand that, this is a long process. It's going to require some interlocal agreements between our two cities. And there's also probably going to be some agreements down the road as well between us and our developers for Constellation Lake as well as Shoup Ranch for being able to extend that infrastructure to their developments. And then obviously within their developments, remember, keep in mind that both Shoup Ranch and Constellation Lakes have a PID, Public Improvement District, that has been approved as part of the development. So that means they get to issue PID bonds or debt, kind of like we issue COs or GOs, to be able to use that for infrastructure use. Pacheco Cook has prepared some water need estimates that I'm going to ask Riley to kind of walk you through here real quick so that you can get a better sense as to what we think the more immediate needs are going to be, because we're going to have to start to figure out if we're going to want to start to go down this discussion. We're going to start having discussions as to what we think our need requests are going to be over probably a 20-year process. That's also going to determine what the upsizing of some of these lines are going to be, and that's why that's also important to understand how we think it's going to develop as we continue to refine those numbers with both Constellation Lake and Shoot Branch. Also, I don't know if we can see the phone number. Oh, there it is. I forgot her. The interim chief, the interim city manager was also police chief with Rome. Is here as well this evening. Rome has approached us and would like to be considered in the conversation because they too are interested in possibly obtaining water service in the city of Justin. So I've invited them so they can come and hear the conversation, and if you wish to hear from them as to what their needs or plans are, chief can give you that information. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Riley so he can walk you through this little table here he's put together on some needs.
Okay. Mayor and council, these here are just some rough estimates of what we're looking at. I apologize for the small text. What we're looking at for the most part though is the water demands that we would be asking for and expecting in the future. I kind of tried to break it down by year. Obviously, for seeing that far into the future and seeing stuff, there's difficulties in being able to have accurate numbers. But what this pretty much shows you is based off the top table, I have my Shoot Branch and Constellation Lake breakdown. Both of those developments have told us that they have about approximately Shoot Branch 4,100 homes and residences that they're expecting to build rooftops in the area, and Constellation Lakes is an approximate 3,100. With those and with the build out that they're bringing to us on the concept plans, we've been able to estimate what we could be seeing in water demands and wastewater demands at the full build out, which would be after infrastructure's in the ground and they've paved the roads and start pulling building permits. It's kind of how I have this set up. So once everything's in the ground and they start moving forward with the building permits and getting residents moved in is how I've broken this down from year by year. What this shows you though is that this far right column is the combined million gallons per day that these residencies would be bringing in or would be demanding at a minimum. And you can see that there's about a 6.26 million gallons per day based off of just the TCEQ bare minimum that you should provide to these to a resident at any given minute of the day. That shows you there's going to be a lot of water needs for these developments with what they have brought over and what they're planning to do within their developments. That's a lot of water that is going to be needed, and that's something you can't necessarily just get unless we get into an agreement with Justin to help bring this over to us. Again, this is just an estimate. I, on the bottom, have broken out more of existing connections in the city and other developments that we have recently gone into agreements with or that have recently been built in this area. Should the city decide, not only is getting water from Justin helps with the quality of water and drinkability, we can now have fire suppression, have fire hydrants in certain neighborhoods that right now don't have adequate fire coverage. So by helping to get these elevated storage tanks, you can get that water pressure system correct across the city. It's safer for everyone. You are able, it increases a lot of different things the city's able to do by having this water pull over. That's the breakout on the bottom of the table shows that even with the 6.25 from the two new developments that have asked us to reach in the begin this looking into the CCN so that we can bring water to New Fairview. I've put out the remaining locations that we could expect as well, so that as a built out, we're looking at about 11. Yes, sir.
The remaining locations of East New Fairview, is that about?
So that is a lot of areas like Falcon Ridge, that is the location that's on the west side of South County Line Road right now. I believe it's the former Mayor Joe Max's property. There's a lot of land over there that hasn't been thought of or developed or anything like that. That's just a ballpark estimate of if that happened to be another shoot ranch or constellation on the west side of South County Line Road, we could be looking at about that many houses or, commercial buildings equivalent.
I noticed you have Loma Ranch, but not Falcon Ridge.
I have Falcon Ridge under the existing connections, or it would be people that are already built and are already within the city is what an existing connection would be. So, yes, sir.
What's the dividing line for East New Fairview versus Westview?
So the East New Fairview would pretty much, when you set this up on a pressure plane, you build your tower and basically anything that can fall within that pressure plane would fit. Most likely 2264 is going to be the difference between, I haven't dug that far into what it is, but just based off of how you build the water. And also, as John has mentioned, we're talking about the west side of New Fairview, getting into agreements with the city of Fort Worth and with Rome and trying to bring water up 287. The areas where we haven't necessarily seen anyone reach out to us about any growth or development yet, more so on the western side of the city, don't have a boundary. I'm just calling Shoot Ranch and the mayor's property and stuff south of 407 and South County Line Road.
Ex-mayor.
Ex-mayor. I'm calling it. Sorry about that. I apologize.
But
yes.
So, Max.
But yes, that's kind of my deciding factor. It's nothing sets a stone. It's just when I'm looking at these estimates and seeing what's going on right now, I wasn't only trying to look to please the two developments that have already came to us, but looking to foresee potential new developments, new neighbors, new people that come into New Fairview, as long as some of the other ones that we already know. are gonna be
So
in this
for
area.
Constellation, are you taking into account the multifamily
So
and
these,
commercial?
correct, these numbers right now, that Constellation Lake's 3,100 number is the state minimum to provide water to residents is you have to provide 0.6 gallons per minute. So to get the full day number, you just multiply it out, and that's pretty much how this number, the 6.26 comes about, is the combined total of those, about 7,200 times those numbers out,
But
to get
But
to
does
it.
it take
It
into
takes
account
into
the
account,
commercial
yes, sir.
progress that's going on?
Yes, sir. So these
And then-
numbers help with sizing of tanks and stuff like that. Whenever it comes to how much water gets pushed to each area, that's a different conversation of the size of lines and
That's
whatnot.
gonna be my
Because
next question, is what's the contingency factor over this 6.26 and 10.87?
So that's just the minimum number that we need to be able to provide to everyone. The number that actually gets distributed throughout the day is something different that I haven't looked into yet, just because that has,
It's conservative.
that is a very conservative number, yes.
You don't have usage data to pull, so
Correct.
you use kind of a conservative number. You wouldn't, for this amount of connections, that's way more than you would. It's really your pumping capacity, but it's a good rough if you don't have usage data yet.
And there's extra capacity for future growth.
Oh, yeah, that's conservative.
Yes.
Once again,
That's the reason I put this into two different tables. So not only is it the top table showing you just what a Shoot Ranch or Constellation needs, the bottom table shows those two developments with our existing residents, other locations that we've already been going into agreements with, and they're starting to build, the construction plans and building, and then also the extra land that's over on this side of the city that could potentially blossom into another development.
So 10 and 6 added, or is this?
Say that again? No, sorry, I did a bad job at showing that, but the bottom is combining, it is adding in Shoot and Constellation. So at the top, you have 7,200, at the bottom, you have an extra 5.3 thousand, and so those added together will get you that 12.5 total connections. Again, these are rough numbers that I've we've just been looking at to show the entire picture of New Fairview, or the eastern picture of New Fairview, the east side picture of New Fairview, of what could potentially happen. And this, I know we don't want to get into the conversations, but we have been looking at this same type of picture like this, but for what's going on the other half of the city, with the city of Fort Worth, just due to the nature of being able to extend pipelines and what we can
To
get.
get that, we have to have pump stations.
You'll have, yes, infrastructure and a lot, yes.
What's, just out of curiosity, what size line does it take to get that capacity?
Probably upwards of 24 to maybe bigger than a 24. I don't think so. No, I think 24 would be able to handle what we're looking for. And again, the distribution and also just the ask of the water are a little bit different. You can get the water over and then you can distribute, you have to distribute it differently. So the numbers are a little bit different. This is a conservative, cover yourself. This is bare minimum what you would have to have at any time in order to make sure everyone is adequately.
So basically, we'd bring the water in, put our own elevated storage.
Correct. What
Is something like that comes to elevated storage?
Well, I mean, what we've got now, the million gallon elevated and a million gallon ground support is about 10 and a half.
What's happening later?
It's really quiet right now.
They are very large numbers, but
You can't fix a pot.
It's chump change compared to what it's gonna cost to bring the pipeline.
that is going to, yes, with easements and with construction and just raw material costs, but yes, you're right, there's gonna be a lot more cost for that. I don't. Do you explain costs anymore? What the total charges?
When you get $10.5 million from the bid,
Ground storage, so you rebuild.
Well, I mean, you speak on digital payments and how this will be driven, the infrastructure?
Right, so if you're asking about the cost for infrastructure, then obviously we're gonna have to be figuring out who's gonna be covering what cost. What portions of city, what portions for a certain developer or development. And again, then we start to look at how do you end up, start coming up with the possibility to do that. As I mentioned, both Shoot and Constellation have PIDs that have been approved. We always have bonding authority. If we set up a utility system, then we're gonna have to start looking at what are called revenue bonds that are used for utilities, where you are basically putting up the revenues that you'll be generating from utilities instead of looking at sales tax or property tax. And you're going to start to have to keep that separately. We're also going to start to have discussions that can get a little complex sometimes, in that there's a potential we're going to have taxpayers, right, which are our residents, but now we'll have ratepayers, which are utilities, and they may not always be the same, because you could end up providing utility service for folks who are outside your city. And so those are ratepayers, but they're not taxpayers. Or you're going to continue to have taxpayers in our city, particularly on the west side of town right now, who won't be getting city water service from what we're doing on the east side. They're still taxpayers, but they are not ratepayers on utilities. So that's why it's going to be important that we set up our financials in a way from the very beginning, so that the ratepayers are paying for the benefits and the costs associated with a utility operation, as opposed to the taxpayers having to pay for that.
So you're telling me that if I'm in a subdivision that doesn't get serviced by these new water lines, that I won't have to pay any taxes on the bond?
That's correct, because those will be revenue backed bonds by the utility, as opposed to backed by the things that the good things of the city, as it relates to our property tax and sales tax and other revenue streams.
Good.
Which is good, because if you don't get water, you don't have to pay.
Right, no, that's why you want to structure that.
Oh, I looked at it, yes.
All those that are benefiting from it should be the ones, it's again, no different than say a PID, and who has to pay the assessment are the ones that are benefiting from the infrastructure, or the what the PID is actually paying for.
So again, we can get $10.5 million from this bid.
As he was stating, this is, the need for water for these developments, they are very eager to get this brought over to New Fairview. They're here tonight for the reason that they will be the sole benefactors of it at the beginning, so they're very interested in.
Check you. Mr. Ewing.
Yes, sir.
Me and you were playing golf next week and at Roachton Ranch, and we have a conversation about water. And I say, I want to buy water from you. You say, okay. Why would I not want to do it?
Well, I think the challenge is the timing, right? And then we need to talk about Trinity Regional Water District because they're going to have to preserve that capacity as well. So there's a conversation. So it gets a little more complicated than what we discussed. So it's not necessarily just between Justin and New Fairview, but we need to get Trinity involved, and their board would have to approve that as well. Similarly with TRA for wastewater, the utility would need to buy into their plan, and there's some other upfront costs that come along with that. So those are some challenges that need to be overcome with that, over time. That's, it's part of the negotiation agreement, right?
And then John, why would I do something dumb enough, like cut out the middleman? And how do we become members of Upper Trinity?
So the challenge of that is they're a defined district, and Justin is at the edge of their district. So they don't have authority to go beyond their district boundary without changing the legislation of the state water plan, right? They would have to redefine their district. So that's their challenge, why I have to come through Justin. So they could authorize that, but still have to do the process.
I think we fall under Tarrant Regional, don't we? TRWD.
Well, I'm not sure.
Probably so. I think you're right.
Different areas, service areas for the large providers.
Any other questions on our,
I can add a little bit too. These numbers conservative. I just looked at Justin's usage would be on the same connection count of 4.4, MGD on the peak, probably 2.2. Normal day outside of summer, we're having rain for 90 days. Just to give you some scale on that top line number. How conservative that is.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Keep working out, bud.
Thank you.
the SBI report also recommended that the city pursue the acquisition of both water and wastewater CCN immediately. So I've also asked the General Code to prepare some information to share with you as it relates to the process timeline and more importantly, the estimated cost of applying to get a CCN for us. The other thing that we also need you to keep in mind is when you apply for a CCN, you have to identify to the PDC and to TCQ, the wastewater, as to what your footprint is. What is it that you're trying to get the CCN for? Most of the time, cities will apply for a CCN in their city to cover their city limits. There already are CCNs in their city limits by two private water providers, Aqua Texas and Southwest Water. What you can do what are called joint or shared CCNs for those areas. Or you can also apply for CCNs for not just your city limits, but your ETJ. In our case, due to our population, our ETJ is half a mile. So we can actually apply and try and get the CCN for our ETJ footprint. Not necessarily meaning that we're planning to provide water service in the ETJ, but what that does is it gives you a seat at the table if anything's getting developed of any size in the ETJ and they're going to need water and we have a CCN, they need to come talk to us. If it turns out at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to provide the service for them, then we're able to release the CCN to somebody else, like on Aqua Texas, for example, and let them provide it. It's a lot easier to release a CCN than it is to try and go get a CCN, because if we get the CCN down for, say, our city limits, and for some reason, a few years down the road, we decide, oh, you know what, we want to go for the ETJ CCN, we got to go through this process all over again with the TCQ or PDC, depending on whether you want water or wastewater.
Well, I'll just give it up.
Sir?
Well, I'll just give it up.
Well, architects,
Yeah.
no, we're not asking them to give up anything. What we'll be doing is doing what's called a joint or shared CCN where they already have a CCN. So it just means if, let's say they have, so let's say the former mayor's property, they're at the corner of South Carolina Road and 407, right? So let's say he ends up selling it and the developer comes in and Aquatex has got a CCN, but we do too. So now the developer has the ability to talk to both CCN providers to see who's going to give them the better deal as far as being able to provide the water service for them or just the needs for their development. So it's not like you're asking them to give up anything. You could end up having some head-to-head competition if you have a joint or shared CCN. At the end of the day, it turns out we can't do it. We don't want to do it. We can't do it, whatever the reason being. Just go ahead and let, whoever does have the other CCN to move forward with that development.
Does Aqua have anything to do with this conversation in terms of starting this whole process?
And they can, when you file your application for a CCN, they can go ahead and file any comments if they want or any objections. That's part of the process, but no, they don't have any determination as to whether or not we, the city, decide we want to go apply for a CCN. So with that, I'm gonna have Chris come up and share this information on this spreadsheet.
So, I guess we talked about this in 2020, early 2021. Someone in the Dallas office that's real familiar with this, put this together, approximate costs. What's the main chunk of the fee breaks down, it's an 18-page application. So it looks pretty simple, but there are a few check boxes that you have to do a lot of backup work for, and that's your TCEQ approvals, which could be done some by the developers, and then there's some other ones in system-wide you need to look at, such as a water, wastewater, CIP with costs, future growth, and that you can service all of that. And then the next piece would be a financial accounting and financial analysis, basically how your utility would run. That was another 10,000 and then, or 50,000, and then PUC attorney is 10,000. They, I talked to an attorney that works in Austin with the PUC. He said about 7,000 for 7,000 to 8,000 for counsel, and then if there's further litigation, it adds some cost. So generally, the whole all-in cost is 150,000 was the total for your CCN. I guess it doesn't really make that much of a difference if it's within your city limits or ATJ. I know within your city limits, you can request for what's an expedited CCN, which supposedly expedites the process. Still, I think takes 6 to 9 months. And then the normal process is 9 to 12, if not a little bit longer, through 15 months.
Is there a cost associated with expedited?
No. I don't know.
Just say you want it faster?
Right. I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to do more research and talk to the attorney. If in the ETJ, if you have the right to do it or not. I know in the city limits you do. Since it's your city limits. I don't know what the rules are. I'm not as familiar with the ETJ.
But there wouldn't be that big a cost difference about adding ETJ. It's just
No, I mean, a lot of this is all groundwork you have to do regardless. I mean, a lot of it's a financial report based on rates. They set your rate, what it's gonna look like, staffing. They basically model and build your utility, how many connections you have, and make sure your rate's actually one that works. That gives in debt schedules and that sort of thing. And then the CIP is same thing. I mean, it scales the legwork, it's more the legwork you have to do all the paperwork to support your application. Any questions on the process? And it is probably, when you start it, it probably takes 3 to 6 months to do, depending on how readily available some of that information is. I'm thinking the financial analysis and starting ground up, I think 6 months probably. The all-in process on the short end might be 12 to 15 months, on the long end, probably 18, 24. I would think this would be shorter though, if it's joint and there's no opposition. It's the opposition piece, if Aqua or one of the others protested or something like that. But with the joint, it's a little bit, you're not requesting releases, there's not that negotiation piece. It does solve that piece. This, if you wanted to release it, you have to negotiate and there's money you have to pay somebody, you know.
Pay for their infrastructure.
Yeah, the infrastructure, or even just, I don't know. Yeah, buy out the, if there's nothing there, buy out the, what they could have made, something like that.
Is this a risk of being denied? Is it, like you apply and it's pay the money for the application process?
I haven't seen it really be denied, other than it gets caught up in court litigated to where it's not feasible anymore, I guess.
What's that mean?
I mean, like, if somebody protested so much that you just throw up your hands and they don't want to defend it, maybe. But I don't think they deny it, they're gonna hear it. They're just gonna ask for comments, and if they're kept, I haven't seen it really be denied, I don't know. That's the only real way I can see it being slowed down, is it's just objection after objection, but it's joint, so you're not even, it seems like that risk is kind of minimized with the joint CCN application.
You're saying Aqua would welcome the competition?
No, not necessarily.
I don't know that, but I don't know if they have grounds to say, oh, you've moved in and really hurt me. You need to pay me all this money and you can't do this. This isn't right. If they're not providing really great service, you can make that claim that there's no fire protection, their supply struggled. If you had the supplies, you can provide better service to the customer. PUCs can side with that.
Their water custody stinks.
Right, I mean, it's that sort of thing. If you can make that case, I don't think somebody has strong grounding to oppose it, to be honest. Where you would lose.
Anybody else?
Thanks, Chris.
So we would like some direction from council, specifically, what is the ask that we want to make of the city of Justin as it relates to water and or wastewater? And then also direction as to whether or not you want us to pursue the application for CCN or water and or wastewater. And then what would be the area that you would like for us to pursue if you want us to do that? So I guess we'll start first with Justin. I need to draft a letter to send over to Chuck so he can take it to his city council. What is it that we want to ask Justin for as far as connecting for water and wastewater?
Is the Justin ask separate from the CCN, or is that an either or?
It's separate.
Do we have ballpark figures, or do they change if we ask Justin or if we get a CCN?
I think
What is it gonna cost?
He gave you the cost for the CCM process on that last
And
page.
then we gotta, who puts the pipes in and who does all that?
Well, no, that's different. That's the actual, trying to get water and wastewater from Justin. Now, all those details still need to be worked out, if they even agree to do it. So first, we need to figure out, do we want to ask them to? And then if they say yes, then we start working out the details that you're asking them.
Is there a cost on asking the question?
No, I just draft a letter, give it to that guy.
I gotta figure it out.
That's what it is for that. I would agree with you today, John. Appreciate it.
No, you wouldn't.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Shoot Ranch and Constellation Lake, are they already going to provide the infrastructure going to their developments? We're talking about right sizing to provide additional water to greater New Fairview.
We'll let Don or OC answer the question as to what their plans are for their infrastructure for their developments.
So we've been kind of anticipating and working on this process for quite a while. So one of the things that, we did with, support of the city of Justin is we just entered into a Justin West Side wastewater agreement, which was Bill Wood, both ourselves, Tally, who's major owner out there, the Preserve, and then, City of Justin as well, for some of the properties that weren't part of that, but are anticipated. And we basically did sizing for all the pipe to get sewer connections all the way, and it included capacity for Constellation that would take it all the way to where the existing plant is now, and ultimately all the way to the TRA plant. So that wastewater pipe has been sized, and we've committed to basically pay for our portion of that if that gets connected. And Constellation is kind of unique because there's a ridge there, and it actually gravity flows that direction. Majority of the property, so it makes sense to go that way. The water, not as much work has been done on, and it's always interesting to everybody's point. I mean, Bloomfield Homes is funding that tower right now. We have an agreement with the city of Justin for that. And ultimately, I think there needs to be, what, 4 or 5 towers in that pressure point? Eventually. So that tower, as big as it is, doesn't like solve everybody forever. It's just a part of the process. And it will become operational once it's done. Just until we get the other upper Trinity line, it won't really be able to run at its ultimate capacity. But it will function as soon as, as soon as we get it finished on time, hopefully late spring. I think the anticipation was there would be another tower somewhere either on, we always thought about the corner of Constellation, if you could fit kind of the northeast corner of Constellation, but I think it would come to the engineers, if you're going to shoot, if we're looking at the broader area, where's the best place to put that tower, how high does it go? So we're sort of over my pay grade. Cost-wise, you hit it. I mean, one thing is whether you're paying for incremental or whether you're paying for pro rata share. I guess something that's still got to get, figured out as far as the lines go. Billwood, we're cooperating with them right now to extend. They're talking about what, 20-inch? But it really should be. It's going to get built on 407 within the next year potentially. So the timing is really important to figure out how much we're actually going to be addressing. So the sizing stuff can get done. So we build lines that will be right sized for a long period of time. Because that can upgrade to 30. So that's stuff get done. The other thing that I guess is throwing it out there, because I'm pretty thing on the table kind of person. Because Paloma and Falcon were both showing in that need, and those are aqua serve. So if I look at that table and I'm aqua, I would think, okay, well, you're really planning on taking my CCN or serving my customers. That's another kind of can of worms then, if we're all of a sudden you got to pay for their facilities. And they've got they've got expensive facilities. They've got a well in Falcon, and they're planning on building a well in base 3 or 4 of Paloma. Then there's a well over in Avery Ranch that we connected to for the first couple of phases of Paloma. So there's some stuff there that I think to figure out strategically on what you want to do, because the PID, I can't speak for OC, but the PID is a pool of money out there. We probably should talk about it. It can only be used to pay for infrastructure that's proportional and benefits the land within the PID, because ultimately the owners of the property are who pays the assessment. So it can't just pay for a bunch of stuff that are for everywhere else. Sure. But it certainly is a big funding thing, and we've always anticipated doing that. So that's kind of a long answer, but that's just a bunch of stuff that fit in my head.
Can you add another $151,000 to the 10.5 million? I'm just asking.
No, I mean, 150, if you get the CCN, I mean, we need to understand what it is, and I think, we've been funding stuff for a long time out here. I mean, and we've, I think, are willing to continue doing that, and we're invested, but I mean, We funded the surveys, to get the city limits, the ETJs done, with the Schaumburg test, I think with that report, we've paid 100% of that cost. So, yeah, we've been participating all along, and I would anticipate that continuing.
Okay, you want to mention something about you?
Yeah, I think we're in the same position as Constellation Lakes. We've got a wastewater treatment plant permit application pending with TCEQ. It has been pending since last year, and we believe that we're somewhere around 60 to 90 days from that permit actually being issued. So that's gone surprisingly smooth. Probably because we had such a good engineer.
He's done all you did.
I'm fishing for a discount, CCN application.
So again,
We're just waiting on water. We're the same boat.
So in the case of Shoot Branch, Shoot has not just a PID for infrastructure,
Gotcha,
they have a PID for maintenance.
gotcha.
Okay, and as part of that maintenance, it can go towards the paying of maintaining the water system that they'll have on their property. And that's until at some point the city will take over that. Very similar to what's going on at Fairview Meadows right now, over here on the Wise County side, where the mud, in this case, is opposed to the PID, they're using a mud. And the mud is the one that has put in the infrastructure for water and wastewater, including they built a water treatment plant on their development. And they're going to even expand that as they go into phase 5 and now 6 and 7, right? But at some point in that agreement, it says that the city will take over the operations of that system. That's why they're building it to the specs, the minimum specs that we're asking of them. That's why Riley reviews a lot of the plans as it relates to water and wastewater connections for the homes as well as for the station. So at some point, the city's going to need to be prepared to take over the operations of some of these systems. And that goes now to the question again of the CCN. Are we going to want to apply to that so that we start to operate and run our own utility service? But that also means that you're now going to be able to start charging for that service. And that's how cities generate yet another revenue stream. Is not going to be through the utility side of your city.
So fully built out water system, how many jobs that create in our town?
Oh gosh, I can't even begin to answer that because it just depends. It just depends on.
Fully built out water district, how many jobs that create?
Next week, Public Works, we got. But we have a treatment plant too, right? So they work on those, so we've got 8 to 10 industrial population. Over 5,000.
See, right now, we're talking about 2 different treatment plants so far. One's going to be Shoot, and one's going to be Fairview Meadows.
Plus building, plus all the stuff, make people listen.
It could be about 8 to 10 people at some point, not right off the bat, I understand.
Right.
But at some point, when you're going and going, and you've got all these different operations, you gotta do maintenance, you gotta be able to, do the building, you gotta be able to start preparing and planning and interacting with other developers as they come in and they start to say, we too want to connect. You're gonna need to have the staff to be able to do all of that.
Right, thank you.
I want to get an additional clarification that infrastructure costs, be it above ground water storage, right sizing, would all be paid for by the city with revenue bonds.
That would be a way that we can try and structure it, yes. Now, initially, because we don't have revenue coming in, what you're probably gonna end up having to do is set it up on the general fund side, so you do your COGOs, but when you get your revenues up, you come back and you reimburse the city through the general fund. The other thing too is understand, remember, you have franchising authority. And so I don't know about City of Justin, but I know like up in Denton, we would have the water department, the wastewater department, the solid waste department, and the electric company all paying fees to the city general fund for the ability to use not just the infrastructure, but if you think about it, there's a lot of city employees that are providing services to those utilities, HR, IT, right? Just to name a few. And so they don't have their own services. They are using the services of the general fund, the city, so the city would recoup money back. So once you get your utilities up and running, you have it so that the revenue, some of the revenue being generated gets moved over to the general fund as to cover either the use of rights of ways or also for any operational impacts that utility has on your general fund operation. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. I'll tell you, I think that our ask should be for what was presented here tonight to Justin. And we should pursue our CCN application.
Including the ETJ.
I think you need to hold off on the CCN until you get an answer from Justin. Why spend money if they turn out?
It appears that Constellation is already talking to Justin and working something out. I'm sure that True Branch can do the same thing. Who's going to be the two major benefactors of this? Let them work with Justin and figure it out. The west side is, I'll be dead by the time we get water over there. So, and getting water and wastewater, city water is just going to attract more people here, apartments and everything else, which I don't want. So I don't agree with it, but majority, whatever. So those are my opinions.
So what's the ask to Justin? What are we asking Justin?
For the water and wastewater.
Yes, what was presented tonight was just my engineering as per this draft.
And then just wait for their answer to apply for the CCN.
When do we have to pay for the money on the CCN? After it's approved or before?
No,
we
wait.
apply?
As we go.
As you go along, depending on, what's needed at certain points, as Chris laid out for you, it's a prolonged process. There's different things. You have to come up with a CIP plan. You're gonna have to come up with a, actual maps. You have to come up with a financial plan. So at different points when you're looking at what are you actually working on preparing to get ready to submit to either PUC or TCQ, that's when you end up, covering some of those costs.
That's the only
Now,
one.
remember, again, we are going to be working with our partners, in this case, Constellation Lake and Shoot Branch, on trying to figure out how we're going to divvy up that cost pie, because at the end of the day, the reason we're having this conversation mainly is because we're wanting to provide the water and wastewater service to those developments, because my understanding is if we don't do that, they're not able to develop because there is no alternative. And so in the case of Constellation Lake, we have elementary school and I think a middle school pad site located in that development, as well as a major commercial retail development plan right where we probably need it most, and that is South County Line Road and 407. In the case of Shoot Ranch, remember they're also building commercial development along 407 on the north side, a little further west than where South County Line Road is. We also have a school property for that development, and their plan calls for building a downtown, and in the downtown will be a public park. They've also in the agreement have agreed to donate land and some money to the city to build a new city hall, a fire station, and a library in that development. So, but all of this can't happen if you don't have the water for them to be able to build those subdivisions.
But you don't need a CCN for that to happen.
You're going to need a CCN if you're going to be operating, because somebody's going to need to operate the system. So if it's not us, then we've got to go find someone to say, hey, come operate the CCN. Not Justin, because Justin is just providing us the service, okay? We're the pipe basically that we're running to it. So that means that somebody else is going to come in and take over the operations, and they'll be the ones that'll be selling any bonds and making any money off of it, from here until whenever.
Correct. Who is going to take over, Fairview, New, Meadowview or whatever?
Fairview Meadows,
Yeah,
we're the ones that are on the hook to take it over.
okay. So if we're taking over that one, these other two were not applicable to them, we don't have to take them over?
We do, I believe, on the agreement with Shoe Branch, yes, sir, for the wastewater.
You just said that somebody else was gonna come in.
I'm talking about water.
So you're suggesting that we do that and then open a water department in New Fairview?
Sorry, say that again?
You're suggesting that we open a water department in New Fairview for these two properties?
Not, well, these are the initial two properties. Remember, there's also water at Fairview Meadows, so you're gonna be taking over the water operations there as well.
Correct.
So that's now 3 developments.
But
Okay.
that is not involved in this discussion. That's not on that list.
It's not on this list because that's not where they're gonna be getting their water from. This is
Correct.
just for Upper Trinity. That doesn't have anything to do with the CCN to be able to operate.
We're not
water
talking
wastewater.
about that one, we're talking about this one. So I'm trying to keep them separate, and somehow they keep getting pushed together.
Because I think where you're having a little bit of difficulty is trying to understand the CCN versus just this discussion as it relates to water and wastewater for this side of town and these 2 developments. If you want to just talk about water and wastewater for these 2 developments on this side of town, that's one discussion. If you want to talk about CCN though, that's anywhere in the city that we're going to be running the operations for the water and wastewater,
Right.
which already includes Fairview Meadows. So at some point, we're gonna need to go out there and get the CCN to operate, Fairview Meadows.
So we need one for Fairview Meadows.
You're definitely gonna need it, yes.
Okay.
But that's in our ETJ at the moment, so we couldn't get the ETJ unless you got one for the city.
But
It will come into
it
our
will come
city.
into our city because at the same time that we're gonna be taking over their operations, it says that we can go ahead and voluntarily annex them in to the city, either at 20 years or when they have built all the infrastructure and issued all the debt or the infrastructure, whichever comes first, the city has the ability to go ahead and annex them into the city. So now, not only are you going to be operating their water wastewater system, but now you're going to be collecting the ad valorem property tax from all the homes that are located currently in the ETJ that will now be in the city. That's the way that agreement is structured.
Okay, why don't we just ask the city Justin whether he had to do for asking him? Do that. And then maybe a couple of months we come back and talk about the CDC. Is that possible?
That's
Well, I'm halfway there. I agree with asking. I would table it at least until the next meeting, at least 2 weeks.
This is nothing new. 2 years,
Yeah,
all engineers, all planners, all municipal professionals have been advised us to get our CCNs now immediately. This is a very long, drawn out process.
I know.
Sooner you get, we have to do that regardless. We have to get our CCN.
I'm not saying that. I agree with you.
And we
I'm not saying.
we're partners with all these guys.
I just need 2 weeks. I agree. Let's ask. Let's ask. And just table it at least until the next agenda.
Just to be clear, you're saying table the ask to Justin?
No, ask Justin
Okay,
and just
and table the CCN discussion?
for 2 weeks. That is all.
What kind of time frame are we looking at from the city adjustment?
Well, I'll get the letter to him, pretty quick, Mark, but I don't know what's on his plate as far as items. Any idea?
30 days.
So, but Christmas, we would know something.
So that will council, you want to do that? You want me to go ahead and start working on a letter that we'll send to Justin to ask them for water, wastewater? And then I can come back and bring more discussion as it relates to the CCN. And if there's any specific information or questions you have, please email those to me or get that to me so that I can get the subject matter
How
experts.
about we do the ask, and then you start with Constellations and Shoot Ranch, working with them to get prepared for the CCN, find out where we are at, I don't know what our share is gonna be, what their share is gonna be, and how that's, so when we come back.
But to me, the ask is totally separate.
Yes,
Yeah, it is, yes, that's why it's two different components, yeah.
That was the ask. Why we're not proceeding.
And then
Well,
next,
we're proceeding on the acts.
yes, I think. we-
He want that whole, just 2 weeks on the CC. Okay, now, you know, I'm in agreement with you on getting the CCN done, because it should have been done a long time. It started,
I agree totally.
but just, you know, I mean.
The mayor raised a good point. What is the specific
Yeah.
details of the agreement?
Yeah, what's the earliest possibility that we would need a CCN?
It's the first step towards getting water.
What's the earliest? No,
Oh, years.
No, it's not.
No, we
No,
don't.
we can get water without a CCN from Justin. CCN is to operate their wastewater and their water treatment plant.
So you're gonna get it there, and then you can't do anything with it.
Exactly.
That's just gonna get on, that's
This is
just
the
gonna
same
get
thing
the
we're
party.
gonna need it with Fairview Meadows. When Fairview Meadows turns it over, we'll need a CCN. That's in X amount of years. When they get theirs built and turn it over, that's X amount of years. My question is, what's the earliest possibility that we will need a CCN?
So if we're going to start working on moving water and wastewater from Justin connection to New Fairview, we're gonna need to have some sort of utility structure in place. And that's where you need your CCN. And then at some point, you want to start, as I told you, financially, you want to start structuring your finances so that you'll start separating your utility costs to a utility side of the house, because at some point, when you do start generating revenue off of utilities, you're gonna want to start recompensating back to the general fund all the money that you spent to get it up and running. So the best I can tell you is the sooner that you can get your CCN, the better off you're gonna be. What you do with it will be another discussion down the road. Just because you have it doesn't necessarily mean you need to provide water, wastewater to that parcel or that parcel or that parcel. But at a minimum, we already know we want to provide water service to Shoot Branch and to Constellation Lake, and wastewater service through Justin for Constellation and wastewater service at some point, taking over the operations for Shoot Branch.
And we have to have a CCN for that.
And what I said, if we start today, we're 18 months before.
Yeah, it's-
I think it takes a while, but, you know, having it contingent on the answer from Justin isn't really, it doesn't, I think it's fine, because in a way it's separate, but in a way, if you have clarity on that piece, it's a planning document. It's basically showing the PUC, you have the ability to plan to operate a system. You have to go through those documents to do it anyway, and to work through the details with Justin or with whoever. It would look a little bit different if it's with Fort Worth, to be honest with you. So, I mean, time is of the essence, but it's not all that is the end of the world if you wait on if it's contingent or not. I mean, but it is a process too. It takes, it's not go and then it's done next month. It's a year and a half, but you do want some, I mean, you do want some clarity on what the plan is moving forward, right? So that plan is contingent on what it looks like and where you're getting your water supply. Having clarity there would help, but getting started, there's still a piece you can work on. If you want to go to that tomorrow, you can work on certain pieces anyway, make some assumptions.
And where did the $150,000 come from?
Well, that's what I was putting the pressure on John to get that worked out and bring it back to us.
Yeah.
That work started.
Yeah, we're not moving, we don't, just because you give us the authority to go ahead and start applying at PUC doesn't mean we're gonna do that right away, because we've got to get a lot of other stuff done, including I've got to sit down and visit with Constellation Lake and with Shoot Branch developers. So I don't have an answer for you yet, because I don't know yet, even with clarity, what are the different plans and maps and whatnot we're gonna need for our file with the PC. But it'll start to evolve as far as process. Obviously, be coming back to council to obviously get permission to make sure that you're still on board with the costs that we are determined and the next steps.
So if I say, go ahead with the CCN, that doesn't mean you're gonna start it. You'll come back and tell me how much it costs.
No, I'm not, right.
And
But again,
that's what the
These are
question is.
these are just estimates. I wanted you guys to understand, it's not $500, it's not 5,000, not 50,000, it's more 150,000.
Right.
Is what we're thinking. It's gonna cost to get the CCN. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we're on the hook for the whole 150,000.
Uh-huh.
We're on the hook for a portion of that, but I don't even know if the 150,000 is really truly the number, because we still have yet to sit down and start to vet some of this out. It may be a little less, maybe a little more, but it's somewhere probably in that price point. And then of that, how much is it that we're gonna have to come up with? I don't have an answer for you yet, because again, I still have more research that needs to be done. So this is just the beginning, gentlemen, of the conversation. There's many more to go. And just because you say yes, go ahead and move forward to start the CCN application process, doesn't mean we're gonna contact Austin tomorrow or next week and say, here's our application, we want to start processing. No, that's not how it works. We, at least what I'm doing is I'm getting direction from you so I can start sitting down and continue these conversations, knowing that there's a good chance we're going to be applying for these CCNs at some point here in the near future.
Well, as Steve King pointed out, this has been going on, so when this question comes up, I don't know what you have in your file. I was under the impression that we applied for this 2 years ago and was in the process and had numbers and had all this stuff. And if we're starting back from scratch and we're going, don't know exactly this and that, that's a different ballgame. So that's why this question is a little bit misleading to me. I know we don't have $150,000 to file our application. So that's where I'm trying to get clarity. And if the 150,000 is to get water to Shoe Ranch and Constellation, then who pays for that? Is it all the citizens because we have the CCN, or how is that going to be divided up? So those are my concerns. Because there's going to be a lot of people that's stuck with the water we got until they're dead. So, you know, do we charge them for that now? So those are my concerns. Not that, yeah, I don't want water, but besides that point, there are some people that do. So I'm just trying to get them the best bargain that we can.
Right, as I said earlier, we are going to have to, at some point, set up our finances so that you have the utility side of the house covering the costs for utilities based on the revenue that they'll be bringing in. But until you have a utilities actually generating revenue, all you have is what you have, which is right now our general fund. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make sure we're taking care of accounting appropriately for any money that's spent to get this utility operations off the ground. So that once it is off the ground and running, we now know how much is owed back to the city from the utility, and we recoup it to make us whole.
Who are the three gentlemen that just walked out of the room?
That's the city of Zeno.
Thank you.
Oh, was I getting too loud? I had flashback?
So, just to recap, I'm hearing that it's okay for me to go ahead and draft the letter, send it to City Justin for the ask for water and wastewater, but hold off on starting any further work on
Also, Mayor
CCS.
said work out the details with builders, the relationship, exactly how it's going to work.
And then bring all that back to you guys when I have it. Okay, I can do that, not a problem.
Because all my dealings with the state of Texas, I wouldn't want to do anything with them till January anyway, because I wouldn't give them anything in November and expect them to not lose it.
Right, got it, I get it. Understood. Okay, anything else? Good, good. Okay, thank you. That's all we have for the side.
Mayor, can I recess?
Thank you.
Yeah. So, with that, we'll adjourn this work session at 8:13. And we will take a 5-minute break.
Thank you, everybody.
It's not as soon as Good. Yeah, you know.
Just seems like.
Hi, I was listening to something that, I thought. Well, I know, that's why I was just like.
The guys. I know that, sure, if you like some money. This, the whole set of things, he knows that all the business get it, he wants it, we're talking.
And if you get. Yes. Thank you. And I'll get back on the patrol board. Thank you.
Yes, so then that's what we have. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's probably. So there's a reason. Yeah.
Oh my God. So if I could go over here.
Right, yeah, so it's like less than twice, yeah, he used it. So, yeah. So those are two. We have. Oh, I heard something.
Hey, lady. They don't want to wait. Sunday.
But they had.
So they'll be here. Good to see you. That's what I'm saying. No, it's done.
Just extra.
They're all Thursday. They're gonna be a big focus. We can't wait.
You got a call?
You just got
Huh?
Yeah.
No, you ready? You got the number down? Yeah. I where?
No, yeah. Last time. And then I didn't have my grandson's, there was just 2 beds in there.
Actually, it's extra. I want the inflation rate, all the rates.
So every week and a half, you do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I don't want to
Susan did get that new badge,
That's all.
Thank you.
so it should be in. We'll probably do that next time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lunch out there.
They can stay in the room first, yes. That's what we did last time. I love that because my.
I think I got. Mel said
You can buy both of them for about half the cost of one. Yeah. The other one.
I haven't got the contract yet, but.
Yeah, it's nice place.
Yeah, that's a nice facility.
Question for, does the, EMS have a washer and dryer out there?
They will as soon as the cabinets go in, yeah. Nope.
All right.
Yeah, that was part of the agreement. We built everything out. They supplied the appliances that we just installed.
Yeah.
Donation.
We all got stackable, or, you know, the full size one you stack on top of the other one, it's gonna go in. Cabinet should be in into the month.
All
So that
right.
means that'll finally go in. I know that'll make them happy,
All the new.
Should, yeah, it's been a while,
which means that we can put all the, yeah. Well, we had the original contractor bricked, so we went to Tritex,
He did what? The original company did what?
disappeared, yep. So went to Tritex cabinets, ironically,
That original contractor, I think it was.
it's out of, he's out of, Bridgeport. And then, we went to Tritex, and of course, unfortunately, the day we went and paid on that was the day that the woman that did it all for us had killed herself, and she was the former mayor of, Pilot Point. Yeah, yeah, Shay did, nobody knows, Shay Dane, yeah.
Josh,
Everybody that worked for us said they saw no sign, no cause, no nothing, and yeah.
Josh, are we talking about things that aren't on the agenda that are business? Or are we talking non-business?
Oh, I apologize, Robin.
Oh, sorry. Hate to be the policewoman.
We'll call this meeting back to order at 8:23. We'll have the roll call again.
Barbara Burger.
John Cassett.
Walter Clemens, Stephen King.
John Taylor,
Jimmy Royston.
we're all here and present. We have a plan. Yeah, please join me in a place. The flags.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas.
Flag, honor the Texas flag.
I pledge
Allegiance to thee,
Texas,
Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Brooke, I really feel like for our attendees, we should have it up on the screens.
Public comment?
That's the right one.
Do we have any public comments?
No public comment? Consent agenda. All matters as consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and to be enacted by one motion. An item can be removed from consent agenda by the city administrator, mayor, or any council member and will be considered after approval of the consent agenda. We have A, approval of the September 2022 fiscal report, financial report, and fourth quarter investment statement. B, approval of the city council meeting minutes from October 3rd, 2022.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll move to 5, new business. All matters listed in new business are discussed and considered separately. A, receive, consider, and act on the purchase of a crack seal trailer.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll take this one. So the city council has directed staff to focus on maintenance and reconstruction of our public infrastructure, including our roads. In an effort to accomplish this, the staff has assessed equipment and personnel needs and determined that the addition of a crack seal trailer is needed. This piece of equipment will allow us to do proper preventive maintenance on our asphalt roads by sealing the actual road cracks, preventing further degradation of our streets. This will allow a single person to do that crack sealing as compared to the 3 or 4 people that sometimes are needed now under the cold seal process. The purchase of this equipment was discussed with the council during the formulation of the fiscal year 22-23 budget. As a result, it was included in the capital outlay section of the Public Works Department that was approved by the council. We are going through a purchasing cooperative known as Sourcewell, of which we're a member. And Sourcewell does all the procurement conducting of these items to make sure that we are in compliance. The quote is for this piece of equipment is for $47,115.44, and that does include a $1,500 freight charge. On October the 3rd of this year, the city council approved a loan agreement with Government Capital that included the borrowing of money for this piece of equipment. For the loan terms, the first payment of the principal and interest for the loan for this piece of equipment will not occur until October of 2023. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Harvey?
We didn't get any other bids except 5 more or Source. Is that, we didn't get competitive bids?
So Sourcewell does the competitive bidding, just like Byboard does ahead of time. So no, we did not go anywhere else other than them.
Would it be possible to get, free estimate?
I'd have to turn to Josh on that.
No, sir. There's only 2 manufacturers out there that either make a crack sealing machine, and Crafco, obviously, is the only one that makes Crafco and nobody else. And the other one, which is Leroy, I wouldn't even know where to begin with it. So we would bet, at the best, we'd be able to get 2, and it'd be from 2 different companies. But both of them rep their own equipment, nobody reps them for them.
Well, and I don't know anything about crack seal, and so this may be,
Feel free to ask me any question on the wall, sir.
for new, but I found 3 or 4 Marathon and Crack Pro, and going through here, they're all cheaper than this one, and so that was my concern, is if we could put it out for bid and maybe save, money, for the city, that would be my recommendation.
With all due respect, I don't necessarily look at getting something at the lowest. I look at something that's gonna give us the most value in the long run, the machine that's gonna give us the least amount of trouble, bang for the buck over the long run. I would rather buy, just for example, I would rather pay $100 more to buy a piece of equipment made by Spill than
Right.
save $100 and go to Harbor Freight and buy one.
I got it, but
And so the Craftco Super Shot 60 is the #1 most used machine by most departments. Matter of fact, Highland Village is just retiring that one only because they're upgrading to another Craftco machine.
right, when we're talking about, 5 to 10,000 or more dollars, for the taxpayers, I think that we should use a little bit more, in explaining that. I know about my board, I was a member of it, you gotta pay in, everybody don't give them bids because everybody's not a member of my board, so just the hour I spent looking through comparing machines and so forth, there is a big price discrepancy. And again, that would be my only recommendation to the council, would be that we get other bids to see how that compares. Skill saws, yes, we know they're top of the line, we agree with that. Some people may argue for Husqvarna or whatever, because both of those are on the Alaskan shows that I watch. I know those are top-notch machines. I'm not suggesting going and getting a Pullman, chainsaw or handsaw or Rovi. I'm just asking that the city may want to put it out for bid so that we could save upwards of $10,000, just according to what I looked through.
I agree with Harvey, but to your own point, Harvey, is you know nothing about the crack sealer. I know nothing about the crack sealer. Is it the same thing that this crack coat does, that this stack you have here does? I mean, I don't know. But we're trusting Josh and John to make these decisions for us. I mean, if this thing does exactly what craft code does for $14,000, then maybe we consider the $14,000.
And this may be a base.
Sure.
Add whatever.
I'm just giving an example. So if this saves me $33,000 and does the exact same job as this craft code, I would absolutely like to consider, more options. That's just common sense. If this isn't $100, it's not $1,000, it's $33,000. And I agree with Harvey. If we can save this type of money and the machine do the same job without the cold press or whatever that process is we're talking about here, then I would consider finding other options. But then I'm sitting here looking at this thing for $14,000. I don't know what it does, but.
Can I look at it?
There's a whole stack of them. That's something. And there's companies in Texas that make them in Texas. There's several in Canada, but that would be my suggestion to the council.
I agree with you.
I do too, the way, I just want to be sure. And let's say, for example, what's this machinery trailer?
Some of those are used.
So that means it's used.
Some of them are new.
Some of them are. Okay, it's crack over here, this is crack over. That's what we're looking at, that's 29,000. Okay? This other one is who, 100 gallon crack sealing, who is it, who makes
And
it?
this is where we rely on y'all. I'm not even.
Who makes this one? 31,000. Does it say?
And if I got something to compare it to, I'm fine. I know how pipe board works and I understand it, and a lot of times it has a good price, a lot of times it don't.
You know, there's some. Do you have an opinion, Steve?
No, I know nothing. So I'm trusting Joshua's wisdom. He says that's the best way to go, then I believe it.
We have a marathon here, you know anything about marathon? That stone looks like it would do the same thing as a crack coat. Not a whole lot of information in Pennsylvania.
That's bad right there. So that's bad enough right there.
That's right.
Pennsylvania.
Free shipping
Free shipping, just say that.
and information I didn't put in there.
You go to the transport Canada approved.
I
For
think
the last 30 years, I bought paper towels, toilet paper, bleach, chemicals and everything. And I compare apples to apples, bottles, toilet, side by side, and I get the best price from 3 to 5 different people before I purchase a truckload. Now, I'm just asking if we did that, if we looked at these other machines, fine. If we didn't, maybe we want to.
I think it's our responsibility to do a competitive bid on these, to do apples to
I
apples.
agree.
And the other thing that we always want to remember too is, we may save money on this, and that's fine, I'm not questioning that. But when we do purchase that craft coat, we got free training for life.
Like I said, apples to
That
apples,
comes in
apples
here.
to apples compare. Training, warranty.
I think we need to do. Yeah, I think we need to.
I mean, Mayor, sitting right here, there's one for $21,000. I mean, like I said,
There's 14,000.
yeah, we don't know. And that is a very fair assessment. Thank you, Harvey. I mean, that's fair. And again, apples to apples, whatever that craft code does, I want the $15,000 one to do. And if it doesn't, well, then.
Yeah, I want the same warranty, I want free training.
Local dealer, that's one thing, you know, Craftwell is a local dealer. Yeah.
Okay, council and mayor, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So the idea behind using buy board and Sourcewell is that they satisfy the bidding requirements under the Texas Local Government Code. If you're not going to use them. Okay, let me try and turn it down.
No, we understand, we can hear you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, it's fine.
So if you're not going to use Sourcewell or buy board, you're going to have to do a formal bid because of the price.
What's that mean? Formal bid?
That means you're going to have to issue a request for procurement or an invitation to bid, publish it, and meet all of those requirements under state law.
What cost us nothing?
Well, we need an attorney to help prepare that.
It's not gonna be $33,000.
No, it's not.
It could be.
But no.
Well, I could.
No, I'm saying at the end of the day, you could end up still buying this piece of
Yeah,
equipment.
we don't.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
true.
it costs us time too. I mean, these roads, they need to be fixed yesterday.
You're right,
So-
you're right, but it's just the idea that there's something out there comparable. I mean, if it was $10,000, I wouldn't care, to be honest. But I'm seeing $33,000 difference. So, and again, it might be, you're right, it'll be lawnmower, like I have, thanks, John. And, the John Deere, right? It might be that.
Do you wear a solar backpack when you're pushing that mower?
Now I got 3 batteries.
did you get your discount and everything? So we're gonna do that.
No, Biden caught my pen.
Buy the butter? I need something.
Genuinely, like,
This council didn't want to.
No.
Zero.
I got to agree with John on this because, I mean, yeah, and I want to thank Harvey for coming up with that. Yeah, there is something out there that's a little bit cheap. We can say $20,000.
what's the,
I think we should.
how long is the process, John?
Yeah.
4 to 6 weeks.
Well, you're not gonna be able to do anything anyway in the next couple of weeks anyway, right?
Was that?
Because of weather.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do anything, yeah, but I mean, the crack sealing is not restricted, as much as say asphalt, HMA is. As long as I've got 50 degree and above weather, I'm okay.
Tonight is,
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not gonna start at 6 o'clock in the morning with 32 degrees outside.
Good man, hard that yet. I don't know, I've got to say, I think we need to check into it a little bit more.
maybe there's that possibility.
Yeah, I wish I had the time, I can tell you, a $14,000 rig is not gonna be what a 47.
And that's, we've all said that.
Yeah, I understand, there's no way to, and be dependable. Is there a $40,000 rig in there that night? It's possible.
I mean, I could have lowered the price, but I opted to make sure that we had the arrow boards.
What do you mean,
on the back of that for
stop,
safety.
stop.
What do you mean
What do
lower
you
the
mean
price?
you can lower the price? What does that mean?
Take some of these
There
off.
are stuff that I had put on the base model of that equipment, like the arrow boards that tell people, hey, we're working on. this.
Okay, that's safe. Okay, I can appreciate that. What else?
We've got there's the communication module on the wand that allows me to press the button and tell the driver to go ahead and pull forward without me having to yell and say, hey, move forward.
Okay.
So they're itemized out there on that bid that literally tells you any additional item that was put on there, like tank.
Yeah, you're talking hundreds of dollars on that, on those items.
We're 1, 2, 3, we're $7,000. I mean, the hitch, the flash bar, well, the rear hitch, flash, the beacon light, the backup alarm, visual safety, arrows, spare tire, toolbox, fire extinguisher, overnight heater. We're for 5,000 to 7,000 a month.
Obviously, certain items are required by DOT, spare
Sure.
tire, fire extinguisher, required by.
Safety items, you don't want to skimp on.
So, but the base itself is 41.3.
Correct.
Can't even get a hitch for free.
We're gonna suppose this engine covers don't cost anything. The cover on the engine doesn't cost anything.
You know, that's solar power backpack, Jim. Sound like a bitch.
Maybe Josh needs one to run his lights.
That's right. I
And
think
we're looking at November 7th to bring it back, and then if you put it out to bid, you're at, which holiday is your January? And
Tell you what frustrates me is we approved it from budget, we approved the loan.
we have numbers.
We did.
Numbers, sir.
We did,
That's all
we
we
already approved the numbers. Now we come down here and now we start questioning when we're ready to buy.
We're not questioning the numbers, Steve, down at all. We're questioning there are options now. We went through budget season. John gave us $150-some thousand in maintenance equipment that they wanted to purchase. Yes, let's get these roads fixed. Now, there's potential for the numbers to go down significantly. We've approved up to $47,000, whatever that number is. We've approved up to that. And now there's a possible, we're gonna let Josh do his work over the next 2 weeks. He brings it back to us and says, you know what, guys, I can lower it 10 grand, or like, this is probably our best option, or what have you. This is by no means.
but then,
Let me make sure I'm clear, because we're gonna go to the RFP process, it's gonna be more than 2 weeks.
No, actually, no, I'm not saying RFP. What I'm saying is, Harvey sat here for 1 hour
But you either get it from the board or you.
Oh, see,
No, hear me out. No, I understand where you're going. I
Okay.
understand where you're
Yeah,
going.
because I'm not
But
clear where you're going.
what I'm saying is targeted 1 hour out of his day to, he found 5, 6, 7, 8 options. We don't know, is it apples to apples? We don't know that. We're all saying that out loud. We've approved the money. But if Josh can take 1 hour out of his day and know exactly what he's looking for and come back to us on November 7th, shoot us an email or whatever, and say, here's the numbers or the weekly update to say, maybe we stick with this, or here's the numbers or what have you. I'm not saying in 2 weeks have an RFP. I know that's not possible. What I'm
Okay.
saying is, please take 1 hour of your
Look
day.
at some other options and what those features. I
Tell
guess you could say
tell us
that was
why,
right.
tell us why this is our best option.
And I'll throw this out there and I'll get criticized from everybody in the world.
Do it anyway.
So, and I said, so we look at saving, I'll throw the number out there, $10,000.
Okay.
We're gonna lose 6 to 8 weeks and we're gonna miss getting all this crack seal done before we get freezing rain in these seals. That's gonna cause more than $10,000 damage in roads.
Valid point.
That is,
That's my concern.
that is about important right there, because.
This freezing rain is what
Need
kills
to get
roads.
it done before it starts freezing, that's for sure.
So Chisholm Hills, as you know, we just did this asphalt reconstruction. And because of the severe drought that we've experienced this summer, we've started to see some cracking already. We have gotten the vendor, Jago Public, to come out there and address the bigger ones. But some of the smaller ones, they're not touching. And from what I understand, it's kind of an act of God, so we can't call in their maintenance bond. We can't really force their hand to do anything. So it's on us. And yes, so right now we're in a race against time to go out there and start sealing these cracks. From what I understand, what did you tell me the delivery was going to be on this one?
It's 4 weeks.
Yeah, so by the time we actually order it, we're looking at about a 4-week delivery if it actually gets here on time. Which I'm hoping we'll be able to start getting these cracks sealed, mainly up in the Chisholm Hills area right now, before the cold rain sets in. Because otherwise, once it gets down into the base and it freezes and expands, then the damage is done and it's gonna be even more difficult at that point forward. Now, either way, we're still gonna need to start our crack sealing process for the city. So whether we start it in 4 weeks or we start it, 14 weeks, it's still gonna be something that we need to get off the ground. So understand that's what we're committed to. We'll do whatever the council wants us to do, not a problem.
Yes, sir.
If we are in a critical time crunch, they do rent these, that they could pick up and start quickly on fixing these. The problem, I don't think problem is the right word, but when you go to buy board and you say crack sealer, it's crack sealer. Now, supposedly they compared to everybody that is on crack, buy board, this company, this company, and this company, and they chose this company. So there's one machine, that's it. I don't think that's the best way to buy stuff. But especially when it comes to other people's money. Yes, it's budgeted. We can spend the entire budget and, the citizens will be happy with it, that we could have got it cheaper. They don't care. But it concerns me that if we can save $10,000, that we use a process where we know that we're getting the best deal and the piece of equipment that we want.
Can you rent one of these, Josh?
That's what I'm looking at right now, sir. I'll be honest with you, I've never heard of it, but I will find out if it's out there.
Mayor, can you rent one?
Yeah, you can.
I'm gonna say probably, I didn't think we could rent a book mower, but found a book mower we can
We
do.
found one person there.
One person down there said Texas.
We can't get it. But they do rent it.
Person here.
Texas has it locked down.
Y'all rent crack sealers.
I just don't like what it makes. I've never had a good experience with going to bid. You always get something, stuck with something that you don't want.
What's that now?
I said, I've never had a good experience when I go on the bid. You always get stuck with something you really don't.
Oh, yeah, you're not remember. All right. Maybe we can do it right here in the room, Josh.
Do what?
Maybe we can do it right here in the room.
We're all building, we're.
What's an 18-inch hitch extension?
To give you a better swing. So
You need that.
if it's shorter and you're turning, and you extend it 18 inches, and now you get a better turning radius.
Especially with a four-wheel pickup. You don't. The trailer short.
You don't need to do it.
I didn't need that.
You
You
don't
need a lot of battery box?
Yeah, we've already had one stolen.
You can't put it out one place, yeah.
You know, we lost a diesel gas can when we stepped away for lunch. We lost a battery.
To his point, can you lock it up like someone?
Kind of like
Can't you put a latch
on the battery.
on the battery box? Keep from stealing the battery box?
Yeah, that's what we got. Otherwise, it's an exposed battery that anybody.
Yeah, but last year we paid, what was it, how much was that lock back, like $236? We can go down and buy padlocks. I know we sell them for $19.
Yeah, but they don't, it doesn't come with a box. It's just a battery strapped to the frame without that.
Okay. What's a flash bar? You need a flash bar?
That's the rotating beacon. Yes.
Just like,
Overnight heater with fitting?
Yes.
So, yeah, we found the Craftco Super Shot 60, well, actually the Super Shot 120, which is his big brother, for rent at Aero Construction Supply. I don't know who they are, but it's allegedly local. And it's $400 a day, $1,400 a week, $4,000 a month.
How much is it purchase that thing? Right there on that side. How much does it cost to buy that thing right there on that side?
Oh, that's the rental company.
But you typically buy from rental companies.
Used 6 months after. It's gonna be ready for 6 months.
You don't keep selling, right?
So, Mayor and Council, if I might,
Yes.
from the standpoint of government contracting, you are comparing what you have in hand that you're authorized to purchase with items that you don't know that you're authorized to purchase. So you can compare what may be available on the market, but that's no guarantee you'd be able to purchase it unless it's either on buy board, Sourcewell, or some other government approved pre-qualified list of vendors. If it's just out there on the market, you really can't go out and purchase the other item unless it was submitted as part of a bid.
No.
Does that make sense?
Because that's the old bid, they just don't have it the rest of it.
Yes.
Yes.
I understand your goal here, but I don't know that comparing what you may not be able to purchase with what you can purchase is a utilitarian approach. And that's said as somebody that was a contracting officer for a political subdivision.
My apologies, I didn't forget it's a company that was selling us does rent. Craftco does rent their own product. And he did tell us that if we needed to get it right here, right now, while we were waiting for it to be manufactured and then purchased it, that he would give us a very good deal on renting one. You get it to buy while we're waiting for it to be manufactured. Thanks for there. Fresh my memory a little bit.
And I'm not weighing in saying what you should or shouldn't do. I'm just telling you what you legally can do.
Well, we can't legally put it off for a little while, can't we?
Any, Other questions, concerns, comments?
So,
I think we can do this in the area zone, to be honest. That's why there's two parking right there.
We've been 40 minutes on this one.
Yeah.
so you clock? Yeah. Okay, I'll make a motion, we table this.
Motion to the table, do we have a second? Motion to table.
Second, the market.
All those in favor of the table, say aye. Those opposed? 4-1. Okay.
And can I clarify the four was Harvey, John Passett, and
Well,
Jimmy?
yes.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move to B, receive, consider, and act on the purchase of a hot box trailer.
Thank you, Mayor. This is staying to the previous conversation. We're using Sourcewell. We didn't get out bids.
And this is different, my board's number,
This is Sourcewell as well.
and I would have the same comment.
$90,000. This is a chunk of money. 130, 150. Wait a minute. No. The price of the truck gets you up over $200,000. We didn't approve $200,000. So if we just came to us and we said yes to 47, yes to 90.
No, it's not 90. It's 41,890.
That's the two combined.
I'm an idiot, sorry. Okay, that makes me feel a lot more. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. So what is the price though? So it's minus the 47?
41,890, and it includes a 2,950 freight charge. If you look under the financial consideration section of that, the number.
Is that like a transportation cost when you buy a truck from the dealership? Transportation
Well,
cost?
that's what it costs for Rick actually, because this is made to spec. All these are made to spec. So I order it, they put that on the line. When it's done, it's put on a rig and brought to me. So that's wherever it's coming from. I have to pay that 18-wheeler.
Do we have to be the Westlake on Compton dollars?
Do what now?
Do we have to be Westlake?
Well, no.
Can we just get it
I
down?
can also go to Alibaba and end up with her there too.
Right.
So,
I get it, we approved the dollars, I get it. We took it right to,
I mean, there's a million cities right now that have graveyards full of equipment. I don't want to be that city.
we should go get it from them then. Help
But
them
there
with
are
it.
graveyards that are all cracked out.
discussion, questions?
Again, I'd like to see a comparison to the different manufacturers.
And Josh is doing the comparisons, right? We're not going RFP, right? Sure. Why not?
So,
The first payment ain't due till October next year. Keep that in mind. Well, that's
What were
the-
you talking, I mean, number, tell us what's going on there?
The first payment's not due till next October
Okay, on the truck?
on everything so
On
far.
trailers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the other one's taxed right now.
That's stable. We'll make a motion, do something. I'm a citizen.
we have a motion. We have no question, concerns, or discussion. Do I have a motion for 5B?
I make a motion to take this.
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Table. All right, so at this time, we'll go to Number 6 on our agenda, executive session. We're going to recess to executive session to discuss matters relating to real property pursuant to 551.072 Texas Government Code deliberation of economic development pursuant to 551.087 Texas Government Code discuss personal matters pursuant to 551.074 Texas Government Code discuss IT network or critical infrastructure security pursuant to 551.089 Texas Government Code, and to consult with the city attorney pursuant to 551.071 Texas Government Code. The council may go into closed session at any time when permitted by Chapter 551 Texas Government Code or Chapter 418 Texas Tax Code. Before going to closed session, a quorum of the council must be present. The meeting must be convened as an open meeting pursuant to proper notice. The presiding officer must announce that a closed session will be held and must identify the section of 551 or 418 Texas Government Code authorizing the closed session. So we're going to go into closed executive session under section 551.071 disannexation petition at 8:59. We shall return.
No, why am I here? There's nobody even here. I'm gonna go home.
Why I take care of the job?
What?
Why do I take care of the job?
I just don't want you spending their money.
Well, since nobody else is here for me to make behave, I mean, I've seen 2 city council members actually go at it, so.
Hopefully these guys are all adults. I'm gonna go ahead and go to the grass. No one can go to the council and employees.
Take care, boss.
Absolutely. Sorry, I didn't get your toys.
Try to spend some time in your truck.
Try to do what with my truck?
Spend some time with your truck. You don't ever drive that damn thing.
Actually, my chief is mad at me because I told him next week I have a conference in Corpus Christi. I told him I'm driving my personal truck to my conference.
You pay mileage?
He's not going to give me mileage because I have another vehicle. But my other vehicle sucks compared to my new truck. But you know what? They give me a per diem for food.
You're using.
But I can also deduct the mileage off my tax.
Yeah, that can't do. But legally, you have to pay your money. Oh, now I think the option of taking the company's vehicle. It's probably a piece of crap, but.
It is a piece of crap now that I know what a real truck is.
Considering what I see you driving on a regular basis, it's just.
Exactly. So I'm gonna take my, because I get like $75 a day for food. I'm not gonna eat that much. So part of that money is gonna go in the gas tank and I'm deducting the mileage off my taxes. And I get to drive in comfort. For my 5-hour road trip. You know? And you'd be surprised, I already have over 1,000 miles on my truck.
Really? Good God.
I do drive it sometimes.
Apparently, it's like on Sunday only.
That is about one. And then I drive and drive and drive, and then I wonder why I didn't get nothing done at the house.
Oh,
But I'll see you later.
my. Right. Very old, it's right. Good question. Probably looking at it in grand. Marathon.
Sure you can get one or two?
Borrow one from the firefighters.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
The newspaper left.
Yeah.
What does it matter?
I got it. Oh, thank you, I'm sorry. So at 9:15, we will return back from open session. We will discuss and take appropriate action in any resulting from discussions conducted in executive session. So that at this time, I would ask the staff to report to us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. So the staff is prepared to make a couple of comments on the petition that was submitted to the mayor and the council at the last meeting. I'm going to ask the city secretary to make those remarks because really the certification of any petition that's been filed with the city falls under the purview of the city secretary working with our city attorney. And I've been involved in those discussions as well. So we've had numerous discussions since the last council meeting in reviewing the petition. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the city secretary. Brooke, if you'll give the council some information, I'd appreciate it.
A petition to de-annex of Chisholm Hill subdivision phases 1, 2, and 3 and Martindale Lane was submitted to the mayor at the October 3rd, 2022 city council meeting. The petition appeared to be an online document and it did not contain any original signatures. I am required to review and certify all signatures on a petition, and that was not possible since there were not any signatures. The submitted petition is defective because it does not meet either the requirements of the Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 43, Subchapter G, nor that of the Election Code, Chapter 277. I will inform the person that submitted the petition that the petition is defective and no further action can be taken on this petition.
So with that, Mayor, that's what we plan to do based on the petition that was filed at the last council meeting.
With that, do I have a
Motion to adjourn.
a motion from John?
Second.
I'm sorry, who was the motion from?
Jimmy, a motion from
John.
John, made motion to second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.